Hello, in this video I want to talk about the Modifier Stack in Blender. The Modifier Stack is a collection of modifiers that you can access by clicking on the wrench icon on the sidebar on the right here. And to add modifier, you simply click on the menu, Add Modifier. We have many columns here. We have the modify column that are very specific modifiers, for example, for normal editing and so on. Then we have a generate column. These are usually modifiers that change the geometry itself, like decimate to reduce the poly count or bevel to add bevels. But we also have, for example, the array modifier to generate more meshes. Then we have a deform column. These are the classic deformers that you can find in Maya, like the wave, the lattice, and so on. And then we have a simulate column with the dynamics and particle simulations. To give you an example of how the modifier works, I have these three objects here. So let me select the cube first, and I want to add a subdivision surface modifier. So let's click on the menu, Add Modifier, and then on the generate column, click on the subdivision surface. As you can see, we have a real-time preview of the modifier in the viewport, and the modifier also works in edit mode as well as object mode. Let's take a look at the parameters. They are different for every modifier, so I won't go through all of them, but some parameters are the same, like these icons here. These icons, you can find them in other modifiers as well, basically in all modifiers. The camera icon means that the modifier is displayed while rendering. Monitor icon simply means that the modifier is displayed in the viewport. This, let's say, strange icon with the values quads, it's called edit mode. It means that the modifier is displayed in edit mode. So if I use the tab key and then I deselect it, as you can see, it is not displayed in edit mode. Then the last one is on cage. This is very useful for a subdivision modifier, because if I select it while in edit mode, as you can see here, I turn on cage, the modifier will be on the mesh directly. This is very useful because you can, for example, select the vertices, move them as you want. It's more artist friendly. Then we have the values option of the modifier itself, like cut Clark or simple subdivision, the number of subdivisions, and so on. Now the modifier stack is completely procedural. Let's say that I want to continue modeling my cube. So I select one face, I insert it, and then perform an extrusion and scale it, okay. And then I apply the subdivision again, or simply turn on the viewport subdivision. As you can see, it still works. Another cool feature of the modifier stack is, as the name implies, you can stack the modifiers on top of each other. Exactly like in Photoshop, the modifier stack utilizes a layer workflow. The modifier on top is the one that is processed first, and all the others on the bottom are after it. So if I add a bevel modifier, okay, as you can see, Blender automatically put it after my subdivision, but I don't want that. I want the bevel to be applied before the subdivision, so I can retain my shape. How to do that? You simply use the arrows here. This arrow up and down will move the various modifiers on the list. So if I want the bevel to be applied before the subdivision modifier, I simply use the up arrow and put it first. As you can see, now okay, as you can see now the bevel is applied. Let me put 2 segments, and then I can simply use the subdivision, and there we go. It is very, very handy, and we can continue stacking modifiers on top of each other. For example, now I want maybe an array modifier, and I want it to be at the end because that's my final mesh. And let's say that I want 5 of these things here with an offset and so on. Let's take a look at another example. This one, let's say that I want to create a stair. Yes, a stair. I can do that with the array, but I want to bevel first to give it a more good looking look. So bevel modifier, I can choose the segments, let's say 4. I can choose the offset by simply left click and drag. If it's too fast, you can hold down the shift key while dragging the mouse. And then I can add my array modifier. Okay. Let's say that for my array I want well, 2 for a moment. Relative offset, because it is relative to a bounding box of the object. And these are X, Y, and Z. I won't explain all the settings, but they are very, very simple. Just play around with them. I'm just showing some example of what you can do. And let's say something like this. Okay. Maybe. Okay. Add more. And here we go. So we have our cute stairs here, and the modifiers, if you take a look at the buttons, they all have an apply button, because before exporting you must apply them. There is also an option in the exporter to automatically apply the modifiers before exporting, but yes, before exporting you must apply the modifiers, otherwise they won't work and Blender will export the mesh without the modifiers. If the option in the exporter, I'll show you, is not selected, in the exporter you have the geometry menu. By default the apply modifiers is checked. If this is not checked, Blender won't apply the modifiers, so you won't have the subdivision and everything that you applied to them. One last example. Let's take the sphere, and I want to reduce the... Now let's make something cooler. I want the build modifier. The build modifier is a very cool modifier that works with a timeline. And as you can see, there is a start and the length. Start means the frame at which the animation starts, in this case frame number 1. The length is the duration. The build will simply make an animation that represents the construction of your mesh. You can see our sphere is forming from nowhere. You can also randomize the animation. And this modifier is very cool. The more polygons you have, the more the effect will be chaotic. So if I add more subdivision, then I reapply it, the animation is more chaotic and busier to look at. Of course, this modifier, let's say that you want a sphere like this, you can apply it, and then you have the mesh that looks like this abstract shape thing. And you can add other modifiers and so on. Okay, so I encourage you to play around with modifiers and read the documentation to know what they do and some example on how to apply them. If this video has been helpful to you, leave a like, comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true.